and welcome back to the FilmSoc radio show. My name is Kat, and today I'm going to be doing another installment of the quarantine livestream episodes that we've been doing. And this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Studio Ghibli, which I'm mega excited to do. Just a really quick disclaimer before we get into the topic. We are using backgrounds from Studio Ghibli at the moment, or sort of Studio Ghibli in George's case. So just doing a really quick copyright disclaimer that all the videos, GIFs and images used in this live stream belong to Studio Ghibli, and we do not claim any rights over them under the Copyright Act of 1976 under section 107. Well, now that that's out of the way, welcome to my guests. Would you like to introduce yourselves with your name and a movie that you've seen recently that you would like to recommend? Oh yeah, who should go first? I guess George, go first.
I'm George. Film I saw recently was mid-90s by Jonah Hill, the A24 film, and yeah, it's pretty good. I recommend that.
I'm Hattie, and the last film I saw was If Beale Street Could Talk, which was really good. And I was very late to watch it, but it's still amazing.
George, what was it you liked about mid-90s? I've seen mid-90s, but I haven't seen the one that you mentioned, Hattie. So I'm curious what you thought of it, George.
I like it looked funky. That's the thing. Like, the style of it was really cool. And it was just quite kind of nice little contained story. And if it's A24, I'll watch it. So, yeah.
This is true. Ever since, like, because I don't exactly feel like a fake fan, but you know, like when A24 sort of like boomed with like when sort of The Lighthouse came out and everything, it felt like everybody was talking about A24. I was like, oh wow, this is really cool, and they've been going on for such a long time, and I didn't realize that like Lady Bird was one and stuff like that. It's not exactly a fake fan, but I feel like I've only just jumped on the A24 bandwagon in the last sort of
definitely same
6 months. But yeah, what was it that you liked about the film that you mentioned, Hattie? What was it called again?
If Beale Street Could Talk. It's on Amazon Prime, so it's like pretty accessible. It came out in 2018. I totally haven't got the Wikipedia up. And it's directed by Barry Jenkins, and it's quite relevant now because it's based on a novel from the 70s about race and relationships and the law. But it's like very deep. It's not a happy film, I wouldn't necessarily say, but it's really important, I think, around now, especially to watch it if you can. But yeah, it's amazing. It's quite heartbreaking, but it's so beautiful. Just the music, I love the soundtrack so much. Everything.
It was such a shocker when you said the other time when I watched Booksmart and you said that, oh, the soundtrack for that I really, really love, and I was like, so you know when you have an impression of the music that someone likes based on like how they appear to you, and then like you listen to it and you're like, wow, that's not at all what I expected. That's how I felt with yours. So I honestly don't know what to expect with you saying, oh, the music's great. I do not know what that'll mean.
Or like all classical music. I think the composer's called like Nicholas Holt or something. I can't remember his name properly. And all the names are based, well, not all of them, but most of them are based off like the different kinds of Greek love. So throughout the film it changes, and then the track titles change, which I'm nerdy and I love. But no, my music taste is very, very weird, and no one quite understands it.
That's cool though. That's like a good way to be, because you just a bit like surprised. It's nice when you don't have just a rigid sort of like idea of it, I guess. It's nice when it's just a range. But yeah, so I guess let's get into the sort of movie news, I suppose. Thank you very much for Peter, who is not here right now, who sent me pretty much all of this information that I found out because he's a sweetheart. So the Google Play top 10 films this week have been: number 10 is Jojo Rabbit, number 9 is Frozen 2, number 8 is Onward, number 7 is Knives Out, which is coming to Amazon Prime on June 12th, which will be exciting for people to watch. Number 6 is Birds of Prey, or the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. Is that that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an amazing title.
It is really, truly like just... Number 5 is Jumanji: The Next Level. Number 4 is Sonic the Hedgehog. Number 3 is The Gentleman. Number 2 is 1917, and number 1 is Bad Boys for Life. Speaking of which, have you guys? Hasn't Sonic had a sequel announced?
I think so, because I remember being very happy about something.
I'm speaking to the expert. Yeah, that's why I'm saying that.
That's just my title now. Just Sonic.
Sonic.
I'm really. Did you say that they're adding Knives Out to Amazon Prime?
Yes.
It's really annoying because I'm pretty sure we bought it yesterday on Amazon to watch.
Yeah, I made my parents rent it the other week.
Oh no, that's so annoying. I remember seeing an announcement that it was coming on the 12th. Oh, what a bummer. They should put that underneath it or something saying it is coming. That's cheeky, that.
And but my parents hate it, which was sad.
Say that again. Sorry, your internet cracked out.
My parents hated it. My parents hated it.
Oh no! Why did they hate it?
Just really didn't like Daniel Craig's accent. I mean, it isn't the best accent, I will admit.
It's quite jarring, yeah. I quite enjoyed watching it when it was that though, because it was I didn't really know what it was going to be. I thought it was going to be quite English, really, rather than American somehow.
Yeah, I think they just want him to be James Bond.
I guess when you get it ingrained in your idea of like what an actor sort of plays or doesn't play, it sort of is a bit weird when, especially, I don't even know if that accent was good, it was just powerful. It just sounded like a lot, so it sounded good to an untrained ear. It's
got some severe whiplash when he started speaking like,
what? Yes, right, yeah, that's exactly it. But have you guys, like, I know that you guys have seen some of those movies, but do any of those come as a particular surprise to you at all, that like those are popular or not really? I've noticed that the higher in popularity movies, as in like number 3, 2 and 1, are all kind of like adult kind of films, I think. Not adult as in like 18s, but they're aimed more at adults, whereas the slightly lower down ones, like number 9 and like 8 and stuff, were like Frozen and Onward and stuff like that. I think like the whole idea of like people just putting things on so that their kids can watch it in the quarantine, I think that has slightly changed a little bit, or I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
I know a couple of companies, I think Amazon Prime especially, started making some content like free for anyone who just had an Amazon account. You didn't have to have Prime. Okay. I think it might have got to the point of quarantine where parents are just bunging whatever's free on for the kids and going, take that and we'll watch the better stuff and pay for it later on.
I think that's absolutely true, yeah.
I mean, Frozen's quite, I don't want to say surprising, but since they've announced that that's coming like 2 weeks early to Disney Plus, was a little bit, I feel like people might have waited and watched it. But
Onward? Isn't Onward on Disney Plus at the moment?
I think it is in the US. I haven't seen it on the UK version. I could be very wrong. I was only looking for Ratatouille on it today. That was it.
I don't have Disney Plus, so it's really I sort of think I'd enjoy it, but I don't know how. Like, do either of you both have it then? I guess, right? Is it laid out? Is it like a good? Would you like say it's quite a good? Obviously, like it's got loads of stuff on it. It's gonna have a lot of appeal and everything. But in terms of like Amazon's got lots of stuff on it, but the layout of it is like absolutely awful. Like, do you think it's quite appealing as an app in comparison to like Netflix and things like that?
I think Netflix does have it nailed on the head of how good it is, because I'll just be looking through Disney Plus and I'm like, I had no idea that thing's on it. It is a bit Heidi if it's stuff.
Yeah.
Is that a word, Heidi?
Tidy? Yeah, I think that's right. Because user-friendly seems a little bit... I mean, it is user-friendly, but tidy is why it's user-friendly. So...
Yeah.
But yeah, and then let's go nicely. We'll go into the Netflix top movies, which are quite different as a set. We've got number 9 is Justice League. Number 8, is a really, I've never heard of this film, Menace to Society, but 2 is like 2 eyes, like, and Menace. I assume it's the sequel. That would be quite a good idea if it was a sequel, but anyway. Number 7 is Hidden in Plain Sight. Again, I haven't heard of that. Number 6 is 13th, as in the film about the criminalization of African Americans in the US prison boom. And so I suppose we can definitely understand why that has become popular recently, like what you were saying, Hattie, about the film that you recommended. Number 5 is Jack Reacher, Never Go Back. Number 4 is Get Hard. Number 3 is The Last Days of American Crime. Number 2 is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. And number 1 is The Addams Family, the 2019 animation, not the gosh, what's her name? I can only think of Christina Ricci is Wednesday in it. Can't think of the woman's name. You know what I mean. You know who I mean. But do any of those come as a surprise, or any sort of like, you think, I've seen that and I think, yeah, that's fair enough? Because I was kind of a surprise to me that The Addams Family is the number 1 movie, because I didn't even know that did very well.
I genuinely just find Netflix as a whole with their ratings just very weird. It quite makes sense. I'll go on and I'll be like, oh, what are people watching now? And I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's
all
very strange.
I think the way they monitor like how you watch a film as well, you don't have to watch it all the way through. I think you have to watch a certain amount and then they classify that as a view, so they add it to it, but I can't quite remember the system. It's all very odd the way they do their figures, but I literally, none of those except 13th, which is like top of my watch list at the minute, none of those are ringing a bell.
No, albeit, yeah, so many of them I've never even heard of. It's very strange. What do you think, George?
Yeah, I mean, I've been meaning to watch the 13th, but that's literally, I haven't really heard of any of those other ones. I feel like this month's been a bit slow for Netflix getting movies. I think that might be because of how many good ones they're getting next month. They're getting stuff like Truman Show.
That face.
That's all I need.
Hereditary. That's going on to Netflix.
Oh,
so
wow.
There's a few good, like the new Fallout and the Mission Impossible Fallout. So it's just been a bit quiet this month, I think.
Yeah.
But like, all those ones are really weird.
I think it's funny as well because we were just talking about this the other day. That like we were talking about like the idea of the blockbuster and like everything, not on the show, but like just on messages and stuff. And it's just reminded me, because obviously like, the June, July, August time is the time that people start releasing like the summer blockbusters and everything. And it's just, I mean, like of course it's obviously all going to be really different, but I don't know, it's just, you're right, it's funny that in the sort of streaming world this has been a weirdly quiet time, whereas under usual circumstances, perhaps not June, maybe perhaps it's July anyway, but it would sort of now be starting to crank up with the summer releases. I think, wasn't June supposed to be, oh no, I could be wrong, I just know this year was supposed to be really massive for Marvel movies, wasn't it?
Yeah, like Wonder Woman was supposed to come out.
Of course, yes,
yeah,
of course, that's it.
I think it was yesterday it was supposed to come out.
Aww.
Do you think that if like companies, they will be releasing films digitally, would you watch them? Like, if they gave you the option, would you watch them in like quarantine from home?
That's an interesting question. What do you think, Hattie?
I think it depends on the film. It's really difficult.
It is.
I think if they release Black Widow like that, part of me will like really want to watch it just on the telly. I'd like go to a midnight screening if they did it, because I was intending to do that anyway. But there's some films that I can't not watch if they do release them. I think there's part of me that's, I don't know.
You can't underestimate sort of like, and I think we don't anyway, do we, like the appeal of going to the cinema to watch something. Like I think a lot of people like possibly aren't as bothered about it because of like the, you know, watching it at home and like the ease of it and the freeness of it, and you know, but like I think you're right, Joe. I think people, if a movie like Wonder Woman got released now on like, to say whatever, Google Play or something, and like you had to pay maybe not cinema ticket price, because like obviously when you go to the cinema now it's because of the like popcorn you usually buy, like the place you're paying for the place, really, aren't you? They probably do it for a reduced amount. I think I possibly would if it was something like Wonder Woman, but again it's like I think a lot of people wouldn't, just because of like the experience type of thing, but we're living in an environment where it's very unusual, so I think it'd be easier to predict that people would watch it rather than, you know. What do you do?
I want to watch them, but I try and not want to, because like it's all about thing of at the moment how they're struggling, and I kind of want to struggle with them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So like I'd want to wait until they had them and then I'd watch them. Like I did an article for the Courier, shameless plug. It was on like how AMC is like boycotting. I think it was Universal because of how they're planning on releasing their future films. The Trolls World Tour that did really well, and they're planning on doing like in the future digital and like cinema releases at about the same time. And certain cinemas just aren't happy with that. So it's quite scary.
It is such a weird, like, I mean, just recently, in terms of like independent or like smaller cinemas, we all know, obviously we mention it pretty much every radio show about Tyneside Cinema, but the other thing is, most recently I think there was a Courier article, again, I didn't write this though, but I just enjoy reading them now, especially now that I know actual people that write them, like Peter and you guys and stuff, where they're like friends who I know writing them and things, but the one about Morgue on the Tyne closing, and that's an independent place in, you know, Newcastle that's like just as much as Tyneside, you know, so it is quite weird how it's nice that you've got the attitude of, I'm gonna make sure that these places stay open and I'm gonna like save going to whatever to go to them instead, because, you know, they need it more than Cineworld and stuff like that. But yeah. So I've got a little bits and pieces of movie news. It's obviously kind of dry at the moment, considering, but I found one little thing that I found was unusual duo Simon Pegg and Lily Collins are going to star in a film, Inheritance. Have you guys seen anything to do with this?
I haven't.
No, I just saw it on this movie news like page, and it's about a lawyer who's played by Lily Collins, who's, by the way, she's like in very different films to the stuff that Simon Pegg is usually in. Like, that's why I was so intrigued when I saw this. Anyway, she plays a lawyer who finds that her father has been hiding an emancipated man, who played by Simon Pegg, in the place where the inheritance is, which is on like a building like off of this place. And the idea is that this guy has been in prison for 30 years and she's supposed to be like, well, what do I do now? And I just thought this, and it's only a tiny thing, but I just thought that just sounds like a very strange film.
That sounds like American Parasite.
Yes, it does actually. I wonder if it's riding on some kind of sort of subconscious thing in that Parasite kind of triggered in some people, maybe. Interesting.
It just sounds odd.
Right.
But not like good Parasite levels of odd. It just sounds like, why are they making this?
I saw it, there was it wasn't a trailer, but it was like you know, when they release clips that say like 2 or 3 minutes long. It was this one, and Simon Pegg's acting really like the whole time, and Lily Collins just like stands there really like stiffly, like, what's she doing? Who are you? Like, it's just, I just can't see how this is gonna. Bizarre film. I don't even know yet, and I don't, obviously, again, it's like a movie that's been announced, but I assume it's not going to be released anytime soon. Anyway, moving on. Victoria Mahoney, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, who was J.J. Abrams' second unit director on the Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker movie, is in talks to direct a graphic novel film called Kill Them All, which is based on a graphic novel of the same name. According to The Hollywood Reporter, it's a love letter to 1990s action movies and is about a betrayed murderess on a revenge campaign and a hard-drinking former cop who team up to take down a crime lord. That sounds kind of fun. I've never heard of the graphic novel before, though. Have either of you?
I'll have to give it a look, but I haven't heard of it now.
Yeah. It sounds...
Peter probably has.
Peter probably has, that's true. We've got this, like... Oh, no, what was I going to say? I was going to say something. Anyway, I can't remember. It's fine. But yeah, no, I think that sounds quite funny. Oh yeah, the thing I was going to say is, it's that whole 30-year rule, isn't it? Like, now that we're in the 20s is... Now we're going to start seeing a lot more nostalgia for the 90s, whereas in the 10s we saw a lot of nostalgia for the 80s. And in like in like the 80s, we saw a lot of nostalgia for the 50s. I think there's probably going to be a lot more of these like 90s style movies coming out nowadays, or like things that, I mean, you just mentioned mid 90s the other day, a few minutes ago, the other day. Wow. Oh. But yeah, another little thing that happened recently was that the Lord of the Rings trilogy had a Zoom call. I don't know if did either of you see this?
I've seen some clip and it seemed fun. I need to go and watch all of it. But...
Yeah, it was everybody. It was like Sean Astin, Elijah Wood, Orlando Bloom, Ciarán McKellen, and Andy Serkis, and director Peter Jackson were all involved in it. And I only watched a tiny little bit of it, but there's just some moments that I thought were really funny in it. There's this one bit where Ian McKellen said, when we all said goodbye 30 years ago, we said that we were going to have regular reunions. Have you guys been having these without me? And I thought that was really cute. And then the other thing that he said was, the cast has a tattoo, like, on different parts of their bodies, but mostly on their shoulders. That's like the Elvish word for 9, because I guess they were like 9 in that fellowship, I guess. And Ian McKellen, there's this one point where he like looks at his shoulder like this, and he goes, when I read this upside down, it says Gucci. And it just really made me, it's just Ian McKellen saying Gucci.
You just gotta love Ian McKellen. He's just amazing.
He's so lovely, isn't he? And like so charming. Every time you like see him on something, you're like, yes.
I'm so bad. I haven't seen Lord of the Rings, but I would watch that.
Oh
this is the thing where I get kicked off the FilmSoc show.
No!
I would watch that Zoom call just for the actors purely.
Is there a particular reason you haven't seen them, or is it just that like have you avoiding them, or is it that you've just never come?
Sheer laziness.
That's fair.
My half brother once found out that I hadn't seen them, and he lives in Manchester. Re-asked for my address because he couldn't remember it, and the next day an Amazon parcel showed up, and it was the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh!
And I think it's still in the cellophane wrap.
God, that's atrocious. How long ago do you think that was?
It was about 3 years ago.
Oh my God. George is
older than that, because I lived in the old house.
I'm just happy.
Wait, what's that, Hattie? I didn't hear what you said.
I think it was about 4 years ago.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
So I at some point in my life, I will watch them.
At some point. That's a start from just not gonna.
You might even not get through to watch it before it's too late.
Lockdown seems like the perfect time to watch them, and yet here I am.
And yet. The next little bit of news is more filmmaking news. The UK industry confirms that COVID-19 guidelines for film and high-end TV production and film and TV giving green light for some productions. It's a 44-page document and includes rules such as the fact that there must be daily symptom checks with the cast and the crew, and recommendations that they should drive themselves to set to minimize and the minimization of crew sizes generally. They recognise that for some productions social distancing is impractical, and they say that steps should be in place to protect these fixed groups from transmission risks from outside of their group on set, offset, and away from location during production. And it's guidance, it's not mandatory, which I think this is something I've been sort of thinking about recently, is that like I sort of saw a tweet a few weeks ago that said, oh, productions are allowed to just go ahead now. And like having worked obviously in like done films before with like very small groups of people, like maybe like 4, 3, 2 sorts of sizes, not very big sizes. Even those, it's quite hard to stay away from each other and distance. So I'm quite intrigued to see like how they were intending to not only make it so that, I think they're trying to make it so that the groups are sort of like quarantining together almost. So like say if you have us 3 making a film, they would have it so that us 3 wouldn't be going and seeing another cast or another crew. It'd just be, we are doing this one thing and then for however long, and then we don't go and do any other jobs. But I think considering like how short term a lot of sets can be, I don't know, it's just an interesting update. What do you guys think?
I think that was the suggestion that I heard somewhere, was that the people, they group you, and then for the duration of the film or however long you're on set for, you all live together and you stay together for that length of time, but it makes it really difficult if people have like families or other obligations. You're away for you don't know how long.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's all going to get really expensive and it's all going to take a lot longer, which is a bit difficult. But.
Absolutely. Especially considering like that is really not, I mean, it's essential that some people have their jobs, of course, but by comparison to things like shops and like medicine, like doctors and things like that, that is not like an essential sort of worker being like a camera person on set. But I mean, I'm glad, of course, that there is these, like, people can go back to work to a small degree. I just think that, like, it does seem like an impractical, but at least they're also counting them as guidelines. They're not even mandatory. So again, that's interesting, isn't it? That, I don't know. But the other thing is the article notes that visual effects and post-production work has remained pretty much not affected by COVID, really, because there's a lot more opportunity to work remotely because, of course, editing, you just need like the equipment. You don't actually need actors and obviously everything. So that's quite interesting that industry has pretty much been able to work with no difference. So any films that had finished their production before now could just have all of this time in the editing stage. So I don't know, that's quite interesting. The other thing is I've got 2 pieces of Avatar related news. No, not Avatar Last Airbender, Avatar the Blue People one. It's Avatar 2 actor David, Peter sent me this and it made me laugh. Actor David Thewlis has, quote, no idea what the film will look like, but he knows he is a big blue thing. Which is just great.
So he's not the same big blue thing, potentially. He's like a big blue fish.
That's true. It could be set on a different
like
place. Oh my god, yeah, it could be Ponyo. It's like a prequel to Ponyo.
I feel like no one knows what's happening about the Avatar films, and
I don't think Ridley Scott knows.
A film when they come out.
Who knows? I'm excited for them. What do you guys think?
I'm not that bothered.
I mean, I like the first one, but like, I've watched it to death now. I think I'm like, I've had my fill of Avatar. They don't need a sequel.
I saw Avatar on Disney Plus, and she was like, "Oh, should we watch?" I'm like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, I can cope with it once every 2 years now, and that's about it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It sort of is a bit. You can't really watch it a lot. It's just not. It's not got enough to it to watch it often, really. But the other little piece of news is that they are apparently going to be filming in New Zealand. That's not a really big piece of news, but I don't know, because I just had no clue how they did it first time around. I know a lot of it was filmed on 3D, but apparently they went to New Zealand.
To the planet. Ridley Scott invented time travel and went to the planet.
Is it called Pangea? No, is it? I can't remember.
Why do I feel? Was it like
Pandora?
Pandora, that's it. Pangea's the Earth before it was split up into countries, isn't it?
Back when the Earth was flat.
Exactly.
Good times.
Do you remember it, George? You're just like,
I'm pretty sure you're older than
that documentary on flat earthers the other day, but I didn't mean for it to influence you this way.
Is this the one that's on Netflix?
Yes.
Oh, what a weird. Oh my goodness. It was really funny.
It's so. I love the end. I don't want to spoil it. That final scene is
watch it just for that ending bit. I think the middle gets a bit boring. The middle part is a bit slow, and then it sort of picks up a bit in the last sort of.
I was only there for the drama.
Just the drama. It's so funny though. It's so weird. At first, I couldn't tell what the tone they were going for. What is this film called, by the way? I can't 100% remember. But
it's Behind the Curve.
Behind the Curve. That's it. That makes it sound so much cooler. Then again, Behind the Curve, you say what do you say before the curve or something when like you're doing well with something, or ahead of the curve. It's like that's probably a joke in of itself, which I didn't even realize. But I couldn't even tell like the tone when I was first watching it. I was like, are they making fun of these people? Are they not? But I think you can tell by the end, can't you? Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but
sorry, John. You should watch it though. It's quite funny, yeah.
I'll give it a look.
Maybe.
I'll probably forget.
The final piece of news before we move into our show is the fact that Martin Scorsese has made a short film for the BBC about being in isolation. which I haven't seen yet. But I think if he's made it on his own, like just about himself, that could be quite funny. I don't know. What do you guys think?
He's made a Marvel movie from the comfort of his own room house, just to spite them. Just to, like, I've made a better film in my own house.
It's a self-made documentary where he goes through and watches all the Marvel films and tells you why they're crap one by one.
Being in isolation, I just have to watch all the Marvel movies and see what they think. It's sort of like a lot of directors have been doing these sorts of things, haven't they? Like Lynch has been doing those like weather reports and things like that. Like it's nice when you have directors like still sort of producing things for people even in quarantine, but it's something that I'm just intrigued to see it really. I just have no idea what Martin Scorsese does. I know nothing about his private life, so
he just hates on Marvel. Yeah, he does.
That's
like
what he does.
He's a DC fanboy.
Yeah. You know, in my film classes, like when we did, like we would start, like the first few minutes of the lesson would be like, Martin Scorsese has said this thing recently. What do you guys think about it? Genuinely? Like, because it was supposed to spark up a conversation of like, what is, like, is one film worthy of sort of like, just because of its inherent something about it, like in Marvel's case, I guess, just because they're blockbusters, I guess, are they inherently like not going to be artistic films because of this fact that they're just made for sort of the purpose of getting a lot of money? And that was always the start of the conversation, which me and my friends would usually always say, well, you can't, it's a bit pompous to say that art should be something or shouldn't be something. It's like subjective. If someone enjoys it, then who cares? But I don't know, film teachers can be a little bit, I don't know, you know how teachers are.
Apparently, there used to be a film teacher at my college. I was never taught by him, but apparently he went in on the first day of the first year in their first class and said, if you're here because you like Marvel and superhero films, you shouldn't be doing film studies. And everyone was just a little bit like, what do we say now?
Okay, dude.
Can we get up and leave?
You were taught by Martin Scorsese.
Oh my God.
Might as well have been. No. Thankfully, I didn't have that teacher. We would not have gotten along.
One of the infinitely funny things that happened in my A-level film teacher was my A-level film teacher was called Peter Jackson. I know, how bizarre is that? And he would say it and he'd be like, I know, as if like everyone was gonna say. It's just, oh,
mine went away for one day. And then he came back on the Friday and we were like, Mike, where have you been? And he was like, oh, I made a documentary on Eurovision and I've just been to Bristol about it. And we were all like, because he's a very private person and he would never tell us anything.
yeah.
And he was like, oh, I love Eurovision. And he had like this weird obsession with it. And he'd made a whole film and had gone to Bristol. And only told us about it. And we were like, no, we want to study it. Like, we need to watch it now.
Did you ever get to watch it?
No, I'm so annoyed.
That's a bummer. You must be able to find it somewhere. Yeah, maybe it's on Vimeo or something. Oh, it's sweet to have a little passion like that. I don't want to say a controversial statement, but I'm not like a huge Eurovision person. So I think it's super interesting how much people really get into it. Do you guys like Eurovision?
It confuses me. Like, why is Australia allowed in it?
Yeah.
Just, you've got to go with it. I can watch it for about half an hour. And then I need to have a break and do something else, and I'll go back to it. But,
I think that's fair. I think that's how a rational person would watch them, honestly. Well, I guess now that we've done that, it's time to get into the show. So, of course, I've got a little bit of like background history on the studio, just for anybody that doesn't really know anything about Studio Ghibli that might be listening. So they're quite well known, I think. I think a lot of people, like, even if you don't really know anime and don't really know much about that sort of realm, even cartoons, really, I think they're just, everybody kind of knows of them. They're a Japanese animation film studio headquartered in Tokyo. It was founded on June 15th in 1985 by directors Hayao Miyazaki, and I'm definitely messing this one up, Isao Takahata, and producer Toshio Suzuki, with funding from the Tokuma Shoten, which was a Japanese publishing company. The funding was accumulated from the release of often what is considered to be the studio's first film, Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, from 1984. But this was actually technically produced and released before the studio's initial founding, which I think is really interesting because I always just think of it as a Studio Ghibli film, but it's technically not. The name Ghibli comes from the Italian noun meaning hot desert wind of that country. And Hayao Miyazaki said that he named it this because they would blow new wind through the anime industry. So quite confident, I think. They're like, we know we're onto something here. They have no. Sorry, go on, George.
I'll mention it later on, but I heard it a different reason for why it was called Ghibli.
Oh, really?
I don't know if it's true, but it's.
Are we waiting to find out?
I'm going to leave going to leave you quivering with anticipation.
Okay, I'm quivering right now. I'm excited actually to hear what this could be because this is just the first Google search that I found, so I'm intrigued to know what yours is. Anyway, it's obviously masses of sort of fan appeal. When Princess Mononoke came out, which was one of their films from I think the late 90s, I want to say, I don't know the exact date, but that was like the highest grossing film in Japan when it came out, and then it was superseded by Spirited Away when that came out, which so of course masses of appeal in Japan. They have a Ghibli museum which is located in Metcalfe in Tokyo. I really hope I'm pronouncing these even a little bit right, which opened in 2001, which was designed by Hayao Miyazaki himself based off of storyboards that were similar to the ones used in his films. And they've even shot short films there. I think they've shot like over 10 short films just in the museum alone. One such example being Koro's Big Walk from 2002, about a puppy that runs away from its mistress and goes on an adventure in the Ghibli Museum, which sounds cute as hell, and I really want to watch it. So one of the reasons that sort of it's gained a bit of traction most recently, or at least like I think it seems to have, is because on January 20th of this year, it was announced that Netflix acquired the exclusive streaming rights to Studio Ghibli's catalogue in all regions except for the US, Canada, and Japan as part of Ghibli's international distributor Wild Bunch, which I think comes up at the beginning of every single Netflix film when Netflix like Studio Ghibli movie. I think they've got their own rules in place for Canada and stuff like that. But anyway, so I'd actually seen some of these as a kid rather than seeing them on Netflix. Like the first one I saw was Princess Mononoke because my dad liked it and showed it me when I was like about 9-ish, I would say. But I was curious to know how you guys got into hearing about them, or if you'd have watched any before they all came to Netflix, because I know that you guys have been Netflix partying quite a lot of them. So I'm curious to see. George, do you want to go first?
Wait, so you want to know how we watched them, or
sort of like how you heard about them, got into them, if you'd seen them before the sort of like Netflix distribution that happened this year?
I've got like a few friends who've been fans of it for a while, and like I've always wanted to watch it, but like never known where to watch it because like DVDs could be quite expensive, and I was like, don't want to buy them. But then when they found out about them on Netflix, I was like, that seems just the obvious choice to start watching them, because like rather watch them now before they leave Netflix and disappear into the void again. But like it seems to seem the best opportunity to watch all of them. And
I'm always a bit iffy about buying a DVD of something that I've never seen as well. Like you sort of feel like it's there forever and you've spent a lot on it, and you know. What about you, Hattie? How did you find out about them?
There was a girl, this is like going way back now, this is like 10 years ago. There was a girl in my school, and I remember she was like obsessed with Ghibli, like to the nth degree. And I think she even like went to the museum and things like that. And I knew her, but only because she was like so loud about Ghibli and everything about it that she never stopped talking. But I never like watched them as a kid. Like as George was saying, it was sort of like I don't know what they are. I don't know where to watch them, and I don't know how to watch them. But when they hit Netflix, it was kind of like, oh, okay, that's accessible enough now. But
I'm pretty sure I watched part of one in a music lesson at high school or secondary. But I think it was Howl's Moving Castle. I remember like a few scenes of it, but It was just messing about on the keyboard, playing like DJ and stuff, so we weren't actually watching it. So.
No. I think that was probably a better use of your time anyway, because like, when do you ever get to use the DJ keyboard ever again in your life except for high school? Like,
I'm going to be in a job interview now. I'm going to press DJ on this keyboard. Wow.
No, because I did music GCSE, and there was one kid at every lesson just before the teacher came in who would just be playing DJ out for 10 minutes. I used to go over and unplug his keyboard. I was that kid. I got sick of it very quickly.
You were like, I'm not having this.
DJ's fun after 3 minutes, and then you just want to cry.
Yeah, it gets a bit, it's funny for a bit, and it's funny when you interrupt the teacher, but like after like a little bit, you're like, just be quiet. But I mean, this is something I think is particularly nice and interesting, because not only do I know you two that have sort of found out about them, not found out about them, you've known about them before this, but like started watching them through Netflix. I have also, like, I'd seen a few before, like this sort of like Netflix distribution. Like I'd probably seen about 10 or 12, I think. But now I've been able to watch like all of them since they came onto Netflix, apart from Grave of Fireflies, which I don't think is on there. I've seen Grave of Fireflies.
It is.
Oh, is it? Okay, nice. Well, I think it's very good. I'm quite surprised, honestly, that it happened, because considering like now that there's this kind of, I don't know quite what the right word is, but what with like Disney having Disney Plus, and that is where only Disney content is, I was sort of surprised that Studio Ghibli didn't get some kind of a thing like that for Ghibli films, but perhaps it's because their reach isn't actually, as much as yes, it's got a big fan base in Europe and stuff like that, it's not as big as they possibly it needed to be for something like that to be as successful as it could have been, perhaps. But anyway, now you guys' backgrounds are all from certain Ghibli movies. George, do you want to? Have you seen Spirit? You've seen Spirited Away.
I've
right?
seen Spirited Away.
Okay, yeah. This is not the one that you describe as your favorite, though. But like, which one is your favorite?
My favorite's the first one I saw, which was Porco Rosso.
And I've seen lots of people I know describe it as one of their favorites. Like, obviously people jump to my mind, but I don't know if I should say, because I don't know if they'd be happy with it. But like, I think Porco Rosso is a very funny one, because you saw, when I think of it anyway, and I don't know if you guys feel the same, but when I think of like Ghibli movies, I think of like My Neighbor Totoro and like Spirited Away, and those are kind of like and Howl's Moving Castle. And even though Porco Rosso is one of the more popular fan ones, I think it's not talked about anywhere near as much as some of the other ones. And do you have any idea why you think that possibly might be? Or why is it that you like it so much by comparison to having seen some of the more successful ones like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle and stuff like that?
Well, I think the reason why it's less popular than other ones is because this is going to be really just animalist. People don't like pigs. They'd much rather see a massive fuzzy bear or like a would you classify a moving castle as an animal? I don't know. Yeah, like.
I know what you mean. I don't know what word that would be, but yes, it's more like cute, I guess.
Yeah, and like it's more about vehicles and stuff, like I don't know the word for it, but like planes, and people probably aren't as interested in that as either like Totoro or Spirited Away and stuff like that.
I think that's a really good point, because when I was a kid I watched it and I didn't really think much of it, and I think it was partly because of character design. And now watching it, I like don't mind at all and think it's quite nice, but I can imagine it's not as appealing. Like you say, I hadn't thought of it that way. It probably is to do with that. Like, but why is it your favorite out of the others? Because there must be something that sets it apart from the
line.
Yeah. Where did you draw the Porco Rosso line?
Well, it's for one, it's the sex appeal. But I mean, we did watch was it The Wind Rises? No, we watched one yesterday. It was pretty normal, but I feel like Porco Rosso, despite it being about a pig who fights it's quite normal compared to the other ones, because like, it's a simple plot, and it's like there's no like weird growy plants and mutating arms. It's just a pig flying around in a really cool helicopter.
Yeah.
And it is one of the more funny ones, I feel.
Yeah. What were you saying, Hattie? Sorry.
The only fantasy to it is the fact that it's a pig. I think.
Yeah.
The rest of it is fairly normal.
It's got this very like sad feeling about it. It's got these like very lovely fun moments in it, of course, like that really really make you laugh and like is so like, oh, that's really sweet. And then it's got these also very terribly like sad sort of undertones to it about the war and everything that are sort of very much subtext by comparison to stuff like The Wind Rises and sort of Grave of Fireflies and things like that. It's got this like, it's so lovely but also so sad at the same time. That is one of the things I really like about it. It's got this, it's more complicated than just it's this one thing. But I think you're right, possibly like the fantastical elements to it, because the other films like Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro and Howl's Moving Castle are very, it's not like a subtext of sort of like fantasy and like it's not a huge part of the story. It is a huge part of the story, whereas in Porco Rosso, it's like part of the narrative, but it's not really the main reason that things progress, is it? Like it's all more about his character than it is the curse. So,
yeah, you just feel really quite sad for the character.
Yeah.
So as soon as you see him, you're like, oh. Find out more about him, and it's just a bit sad.
What did you say, Hattie?
It's kind of nostalgic, I think.
Of like a time that we didn't even live through, but it somehow has that feeling of it. I know what you mean. When I watch it, it feels like really Italian-y, like, you know, when you go to Italy on holiday and it's got this like, well, when you're lucky enough to, it's like got this really warmth and it's like fruity, and it's just, I really like that about it, that things like Howl's Moving Castle and stuff like that don't quite have, because they're not set in those environments. Plus the main female character in it is really likable as well, isn't she? All the characters in it are very well written and constructed, and even though they're quite simple in of themselves, they're all quite charming and good. Like even the guy who's the horrid like
American
guy, yeah, even him is sort of like, he's a bit sort of like one-dimensional, is that the right word? But even still, he like, it's really good because it helps the other aspects of the sort of small, like simpler character aspects of the others. It doesn't have to be this massive complicated character study like, for example, Howl's Moving Castle is, for it to be appealing in that same way.
Yeah, I quite liked how the American guy, he wasn't the most interesting, but he kind of helped build on some of the other villains and stuff. So like, there's obviously the pirates, and like when he's being all creepy with the girl, like the pirates kind of become the good guys in a sense.
Yeah.
And they're like just kind of cringing with her, and I'm like, that's quite nice. And so
it's nice.
Not the worst people.
No, it's kind of a similar sort of thing to what Laputa does. I'm not going to go into Laputa. I'm going to let Hattie do Ponyo first, but it's sort of a similar-ish thing, isn't it? Because like as well, character design is like stupidly similar in Laputa than it is to Porco Rosso in terms of like the pirate characters, but it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? In Laputa, you have these like characters who are supposedly the bad guys, who, because they're trying to get to Laputa and like not exactly steal Lucita, but they want the gem that she has. And so is the main guy who's part of the army and everything, Mushka. So, but you sort of have like the semi-villains, and then there's like the proper big villains.
You're like, enemy of my enemy is my friend. Sort of
yes, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's nice how they play on it, because it's sort of, as well, it's got this nice message of like, not everyone is just what they meet. Like what's the phrase for it? Like what meets the eye, I guess.
Don't judge a book by its cover. Sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else you want to say about how good Porco Rosso is before we move on to the wonderful Ponyo that we're about to do?
The soundtrack is just really.
Oh.
And this is where I can talk about the Ghibli thing.
Oh, go on.
Porco Rosso is one of I always forget the guy's how you pronounce his name. Hayazo. I'm not going to pronounce his second name. I'll be really insensitive.
Which character is it again?
I know the director.
Oh, yeah. I know who you mean. Let me just try and see if I've got the written down anywhere. The name is it? Is it Iso Takahata or something?
Yeah, like the person he's done. Yeah, he's done my majority of them, but
yeah.
Porco Russo's like one of his favorites, and this is one of the only ones who was actually considering Metcalfe, which I found really interesting, and actually ended up making it. But he's a really fun.
Oh wait, George, you're
I think
cracking
that's
up.
also why.
Sorry, you're cracking up a tiny bit. Would you mind saying what you just said? You said start from pretty much when you said I said Takahata because you slightly cracked up. Go again.
So he really liked making Porco Russo, and this was actually one of the only films he was considering making a sequel for. Out of all of his films, like Spirited Away and stuff like that, this is one of the only ones that's like, I could make a sequel for this, because he loves paints and stuff like that. And that's what I heard was part of his main name, Ghibli, because sort of sounded like an Italian plane, like which kind of sounded like Ghibli or something like that.
They have got this very interesting, that I don't really know much about really, but they have got this interesting connection to, first of all, Europe in general, in terms of the way that they like construct sort of like the style. Like most of their films don't look like they're set in Japan, unless they're like slice of life sort of films, like Whisper of the Heart, things like that. The more fantastical ones are all mostly like European set, and they do have this interesting sort of like love for Italian stuff and Italian kind of feel and vibe and planes and like design and characters and look. And I wonder, like, they're sort of, even though both of our definitions of why they possibly called the studio Ghibli are slightly different, they both are quite similar in that it's this obvious love for that country and the way that that's still quite surprising though. Anyway, Hattie, please. So your favorite film is Ponyo, which is much more recent. I remember seeing that at the cinema when I was younger, so I'm intrigued. Why is it that you like Ponyo so much?
I have to have the ginger representation because we have to put it together. I don't really like have a straight answer. I think there's something definitely about the setting, because I live on an island. I am just surrounded by water, and I love the way it's all animated in this film. I could literally watch it on a 10-hour loop and not get bored. Especially this scene, it's just the best. She looks very weird, but I think it's stunning. And I mean, all the films are stunning, but this one especially is like a different level for me. I think the music as well, again, it's just, you can sort of bop along to it just while the credits, like that's what I always do whenever a Ghibli film starts and the music starts. I'm just sat there like watching it like this on Netflix, because it is just like wholesome and happy. And I love the character. I think she's just so sweet, Ponyo. And the fact that Liam Neeson is in the English dub, which I watched the other day for the first time, which was just eye-opening.
Eye-opening is the right word.
Yeah, it didn't feel right, but it kind of did at the same time. I want a live-action remake of Ponyo, but with Liam Neeson.
Oh my god! With the long ginger hair and everything.
I'd love to see it.
That was so cute. It's such a
actually
lovely...
Go
on, George.
It's got quite a similar plot to Taken, doesn't it?
How so? Is it that like the daughter,
like, because the daughter, and like he goes to try and find his daughter, and bring her back. Maybe
that's why they cast him. Maybe they thought it was funny.
Oh my god!
Like, oh my god! I've never made that connection before, though. Wow.
I don't know if you ruined Ponyo for me or made it better.
Better.
I hope it made it better. Oh, but I think Ponyo's just so. It's so charming in a way that like it's a funny one, because it's more kind of like, I wouldn't say kid oriented, but it's sort of like, because it's got something in it that everyone can enjoy, because like, whereas I don't think Porco Rosso is particularly kid oriented, right? It's like kids can watch it, but it's not got the same appeal that something like My Neighbor Totoro or Ponyo and things like that kind of have, because of their sweetness. I don't really know what the word is. It's one of the things I find when I'm describing Ghibli movies is I always have this, it's like, oh, it's really charming, or oh, it's really sweet, and it's like, it's like such a feeling sort of thing, rather than like a, I don't know what the word is, that I don't know, but I think Ponyo is like, I haven't seen it in a really long time. I haven't seen it like probably for a few years, so I think it's interesting that it's like such a nice similarity with like your, because of course you live on the Isle of Wight, like you said, like it's kind of an island. Is it right to call it an island? It is an island, right?
Yeah, it is an island.
That's just,
I mean,
I think, go on.
They don't stop. I mean, Ponyo's favourite food is ham. Like, she eats a lot of ham in the film. My initials spell ham.
Oh my god.
I was messaging you about this, wasn't I? Because the car that the mum drives is like this little pink car. And my mum's car had gone in for a test, and she had to have the garage car, and it was like an exact same real life replica of the car from
That's weird as hell.
And I looked out the window and I was like, oh my god, if this Ponyo's come to life. I was like,
could not make that up. That's
he's gonna start rising and just come in the backyard.
Oh, I love that though. That's like it's like it's made for you to watch it. Like, we know who our audience is. It's like 10 years after it's released, but we know who we want to orient it.
I'm always late.
Yeah. Is there any that you have watched that you thought it wasn't as either as good as you were possibly expecting, or like, oh, you know what I'm trying to lead you into saying here, but like, I'm just at other things, because you guys have said you've never seen a bad one. Is that correct? It's like, you think you've never seen a bad Ghibli movie?
I wouldn't call any of them bad. I don't know about George.
No, so far Ghibli hasn't failed me.
Oh,
It hasn't.
That's quite nice, yeah.
But
no, yeah.
Kat's trying to sway me to say.
I'm subtly, because before we had this, just for anybody that like is listening, obviously, before we did this, we had a group chat where I was asking like, oh, which is your favorite films, just so that I kind of know how to orient my things along to, and I was like, oh, Princess Mononoke is like probably my joint second favorite film of all time. My favorite's probably Laputa, and my joint second favorites are probably like Princess Mononoke and Nausicaa. And then you said I'd sort of thought Princess Mononoke was like all right. You didn't sort of think, wow, that's fantastic. And sort of, I'm intrigued, like, what was it about it that you sort of didn't enjoy as much as others? I think that it's a very different film to Ponyo, though. So I can already see why there's possibly a difference in opinion there. So go on.
I don't think there was any, like, specific one thing. It was more, like, what we'd seen, like, Howl's Moving Castle before that. Ponyo, My Neighbor Totoro. So we'd gone through and watched, like, some of the more classic ones before we watched that one. But I finished it and I felt a little bit underwhelmed. I'm not quite sure why. I mean, the animation for all of them obviously is amazing, but I think in part it was that because most Ghibli films are quite bright and colourful and, like, I mean, not whatever George has on his screen, but it's not the best example. But they're, for the most part, they're all, like, just genuinely happy, pretty to look at. But it had a whole different tone to it, which I appreciated and I really liked. It was sort of a breath of fresh air, even if I didn't kind of want it. But there was something in that I think, because I had expectations then of what Ghibli was, and then that came along and I was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting at all. I mean, there's other Ghibli films that have, like, subverted that, like when we watched Whisper of the Heart, and it was so normal, and I was like, I mean, except for the flying cat thing, but, like, if you just disregard that whole plot point, it was so normal. But I loved that film, and that's probably, like, my second or third favourite, but I don't know, that one just didn't do it for me. But it's still good. I'm not hating on it.
Oh, fantastic! No, I know you aren't trying to be like it's terrible, because no, I know you don't mean that. I think you can definitely would you guys agree that you sort of almost split them up into kind of like, there's kind of like, you can, Pocorosso and some of them are a bit more hard to do in this, but the sort of like the epics that are the more like big dramatic ones, like, but then again, when I say the big dramatic ones, like I think Princess Mononoke is their kind of most epic film by comparison to the others. And then and they've got like, sorry, it's just something that's come to my mind just speaking of this. Did you guys know that the Grave of Fireflies, which is, have you guys seen that?
I haven't, not yet.
Not yet.
Oh. And that and what's it called, My Neighbor Totoro were actually released as like a double together, and a lot of people think that possibly, see, I don't want to give away too many spoilers for My Neighbor Totoro, because obviously it's one of the big main ones that if somebody's listening to this who doesn't really know much about Studio Ghibli, I would probably say go and watch that as one of the main ones that you go. Would you guys agree with that? Just before I carry on, I'm going on lots of tangents right now, but like, and we'll talk about our proper recommendations as well. Like, if you were going to watch him for the first time, which ones would you watch? But I think it's interesting that they would release two films that are about siblings going through, a bad experience. Let's just say a bad experience, just to like have it as a general rule. And that like one of them is so terribly sad and sad all the way through, and one of them is so terribly like happy feeling all the way through. Because I don't want to too much spoil the ending, but do you guys think that the ending of My Neighbor Totoro is a happy one, or do you think it's a sad one, really?
I have to try and remember the ending now.
Yeah, sorry, it's a bit putting on the spot a little
no.
bit. The way it ends is like, obviously, like, I won't tell what happens in the middle, but they sort of like sit and they think like, oh, the mum is okay, and like she's gotten over this thing, and they sat in the tree, and Ponyo. Oh, it's too many character names. And Totoro and the cat bus are sat behind them on the tree, and they're like, oh, it's good.
That reminds me a little bit of the ending. I'm not going to spoil it. But the Tale of Princess Kaguya. I've probably messed that name up, but I really loved that ending.
Fantastic ending.
And I really, quite in a sad way, liked the ending to Totoro, because it's sort of not what you're expecting.
Yeah.
Which I like. I like to be challenged, I think.
Yes, no, I do though. I think like a lot of them have this like, they have this particular, there's a lot of YouTube videos I've seen on this, they have this, Ghibli has like a particular kind of relationship with like fantasy and trauma, and how those two kind of connect with each other, and like how people use fantastical things to get away from the reality of a situation.
Yeah, it's sort of like Spirited Away, like there's a whole trauma of her moving house, and she goes on this weird tangent of a journey.
Yeah, and obviously
things.
Totoro is the same kind of thing. Like they move house, their mum is ill, and they sort of start seeing these sort of like nice creatures and things like that during that time.
It's something I haven't realised just like literally now until you said it, but it's a bit of a La La Land complex, I think, in a weird sense, is that there's that whole fight. You've seen La La Land? Yeah, like the whole final 20 minutes of it is just like, what the hell. But it was very much copied from Ghibli, now that I think about it.
That's interesting. Like, I don't think I've ever heard that like take before, but do you mean because of the in what sense do you think it's borrowed from it?
General unexpectedness of it, in that it is a whole fantasy sequence in a film that is planted in reality. And then for those like 10 minutes or however long that song is or whatever, it's just like they're walking through cardboard cutouts of Paris, and then they're along here, and it's all a little bit surreal, but it's not something you generally expect.
No, I think I think it's particularly interesting because when I watched Totoro, I just speaking of the whole like fantasy being used as a form of escapism, I sort of choose to believe that the ending is like happy, rather than sad. And I think possibly a lot of people do, but I think for some people maybe there isn't thinking of it, because some people might be like, well, it seems that way, so it is how it is. But George, you sighed.
It's kind of like a Inception ending in a way,
It is.
because like it ends with like the spinning totem, like will it topple, will it not, and it ends, will she recover, will she not, sort of thing.
One thing I always like to reference is the fact that in the credits, this is why because my dad thinks that it ends sadly, and I'm like, it doesn't. There's a baby in like the credits, so I think that it ends happily, but you don't know, and that's what's interesting about it. And with it, the fact that it is a double release with Grave of Fireflies, and that being such a terribly sad, bleak film, but fantastic, but bleak as anything. It's interesting that they would have those sorts of vibes, and I think it's interesting to kind of explore that element to it. But I think as well, what other, because for me, I think it's very difficult to like describe a favorite one of my movies. Like, I really like Laputa best, but I really love the other two, Mononoke and Nausicaa, massively. Would you say that these movies that you guys have described, so Porco Rosso for George and Ponyo for Hattie, would you guys say they're like up there and you're like, this is definitely easy for me to describe this as my favorite? Or would you say that there are others that you put very highly? Are they all on a similar pedestal? Are some particularly better than others, would you say?
I think I like to have Porco Rosso maybe a bit above the others, but like for the rest of them, for me, they kind of like this cumulation. That's not a word. But like, yeah, they're all just interchangeable. I really like them all, but I don't know which I like more. I need to go and probably watch some of them to just get an opinion. But yeah, like they're all just, I like them all, but I don't know if I like one more than the other, because there's different aspects of different ones. Like, I definitely say Totoro's like the cutest one. Like, if you're feeling sad, pop that on.
Yeah.
But then, like, Spirited Away was really well made, but it's just, yeah, they all got good things.
They satisfy kind of different things, because they're all similar in how good they are, and that's why it's interesting that they would all cover such very different sorts of feelings that you might be having. Like, whether you're feeling particularly romantic, you might want to watch like Whisper of the Heart, or maybe if you're feeling like a bit sad and want something sort of cute, like you say, maybe like Totoro or something, or maybe if you want something like a spectacle, you'll watch Nausicaa or Mononoke or something. I think Ponyo's a good one for cute though as well. Like, what do you think, Hattie?
I kind of have like the ones that I know I slightly prefer now that I've seen quite a few. So like Ponyo, Whisper of the Heart, because I love any film that has books in. And it feels like a sort of anime version of You've Got Mail. Like the 90s rom-com with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. Watch Whisper of the Heart and then go watch that and tell me they're not slightly similar. And what was the other one I really liked? The Tale of Princess
Kaguya.
name I cannot pronounce.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that film.
Watched that
that one's really
yesterday, I think. And I just, like, the first 10 minutes when I was looking at how it's animated, I was like, I don't know if I can sit through this all in one go, because it's just not what I'm used to at all.
Yeah.
But as it went on and as it sort of developed, and then they, not going to spoil anything, but they move and all of that, it was so feminist and I loved it. So I think those three for me are sort of near the top.
I think I would describe Princess Kaguya as like absolutely like sort of a just complete hidden gem. No one ever talks about it. I never see it spoken about apart from like well, in fact never. I don't think I've ever really seen it unless like I've searched for an article specifically about it or something. And I just think like I've never seen such a beautiful film before. I just think it's just so stunning, and like you say, it's not even just that it's stunning and just like, oh, this is sweet and interesting. It's also that the story is just so like like well made and very like interesting and feminist, like you say. Like I mean, I love it very much. I'm glad that you guys thought so though, because I think possibly people just haven't seen it that much. And like,
I think my like one of my favorite Ghibli scenes, like of all the ones I've seen, is from Princess Kage. I'm not gonna say it, but like it's not really. But you know, there's that scene where then she's just like running really fast, and she kind of becomes like a I don't know, like Naruto running or something. That's a really bad way to describe it. But when she just starts sprinting and then it's just like a twirl, I'm like, that's really good animation. And like that was probably one of my favorite Ghibli scenes yet.
I think when we watched that, it was the only time, except probably when we watched Totoro, that I was like, I wish I watched these films as a kid. Because there's like I think it's one of the ones that's like borderline a kid's film, borderline an adult's film, and not necessarily like an adult's film, but for older kids in that sense.
Yeah.
Because there's so many like messages of actually like not fitting in and that being all right and that sort of stuff in society that as a kid I would have like loved, and I probably would have rewatched that film over and over again. But like I'm 19, I've already just come to it, and I'm like, oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
No, it's really good.
It's such a, yeah, I'm glad that you guys liked it as much as you did though, because like I hadn't seen it until recently. It's a mildly funny story how I ended up watching it, because I had seen it and I thought, I haven't seen this film before, because Xavier and I were looking for something to watch, and I told it to him and he thought it sounded like an action movie sort of a thing, and so we started watching it and he was like, oh, this is really cute. And then like the first sort of 25 minutes he was like, oh, this is cute, this is cute, this is cute. And then like after about 25 minutes, he was like, I'm going to be honest, I thought this was going to be like a samurai movie or something, and it's not. But he was like crying by the end of it, because I definitely cried. I cried like twice, I think, in it. Like the ending especially makes me like...
Oh, it was that thing where you just aren't expecting it, and they flip it on its head and go, well, life isn't perfect, take this.
Hey, yeah. The parents are great. Anyway, we should probably move on. I've got some little bits about what they've got. I've got like a game after this. We're not done yet, but I've got a couple of bits of news of the future of Ghibli. But I actually think for part of it, I'm tempted to hand over to you, Hattie, because you did a little article about this recently, didn't you? So they've got two movies in the works. Well, in the works. They've got a film called Earwig and the Witch and How Do You Live in the works. But I'm kind of tempted to hand over to you, Hattie, if you're comfortable to talk about Earwig and the Witch, because you did.
Totally not getting my article up right now.
No, not at all. No. I'll really quickly like do a little thing. It's slated for it was originally slated for a 2020 winter release, and I think it is still intending to be that. So that's exciting. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, so self-plug, read me in the Courier, because I have nothing else to do right now.
It's good though.
So it's going to be their first CGI film fully. Most of all of the other ones have been hand-drawn, like classic Disney, but better. I am a Disney fan, but you know, it's based off a children's book by Diana Jones, and it follows Earwig, who's the main like female protagonist, her move from St. Morwell's home for children to live with Bella Yaga, who is a witch, and she brings a talking cat with her because Ghibli likes cats. I'm generally like, I don't think there's a cat in Ponyo, but like most Ghibli films, I'm pretty sure. Anyway,
they do really like cats. Yeah, you're right.
I'm not complaining. To me, it sounds very, very similar to Kiki's Delivery Service. There's a witch, and she comes of age, and she moves to go train to be a witch, like the anime version of Hogwarts. And then she lands in this town, and she starts a delivery service and all of that. Earwig and the Witch doesn't sound like she's going to have a delivery service. But
delivery
I
service.
feel like the similarities are quite like prominent.
Definitely.
I really hope it's not a direct copy. Things will have to change. But there was a quote from the director whose name I won't pronounce because I don't think I can. I think he is the son of the main Ghibli director. And
Hayao Miyazaki, yeah.
That Aya is cheeky but somehow cute and hopes she is loved by many types of people.
Aww.
So
I think it'll be good.
I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be
good.
Where do you think they'll release it?
I think it's getting released online. I could be very wrong.
Like to Netflix or like
I guess now that they've got this deal with Netflix, possibly it will be straight to Netflix. That's an interesting idea, but they might just do it as like a regular online release and then Netflix will get it later because they just describe it as like they've got exclusive streaming rights to Studio Ghibli. Oh, well then it probably will be released on Netflix then if they've got exclusive streaming rights. You would assume, wouldn't you?
The Empire
Maybe.
article that like reported on it said that it will screen on televisions in Japan, but they're still not completely 100% about a release date. So,
okay.
I mean, I think there is like mummers of cinemas are opening again, but who knows?
Yeah,
I'd like to see that on the big screen because I've yet to see a Ghibli film like outside Netflix.
oh, that's so wonderful. Yeah. You've just reminded me with speaking about which types of aspects. Another kind of key thing that we haven't actually mentioned really is how much the Ghibli focuses on female protagonists. I can actually only think of Porco Rosso that has a male protagonist as its main protagonist that we follow, because like all of the others do have interesting male characters, don't get me wrong, people like Howl and Ashitaka and stuff like that. They definitely have well constructed male characters, but they are predominantly female protagonists. Am I right in saying that?
I think this kind of makes me seem like a bit of a misogynistic now. I've gone for the only one with a guy in the main role. Oh no!
We know you're not a misogynist, George.
There's still female so that's fine.
George Bell, misogynist.
Exposed
live on FilmSoc Livestream.
That's the next article for the Carrier Cat.
Oh my god! I look forward to it. No, but I don't think it's. I just think that's one of the really cool things about it. No, go on, George.
Would you say Princess Mononoke? Because even though she is a titular character, it tends to follow the guy.
I suppose it's Ashitaki. Yeah, is more of the kind of main protagonist. Yeah, I suppose you're right. Like,
I'm out of the clear.
Oh. I think there's a particular reason for it, though, isn't there? That, like, I think generally in Japanese sort of like stories, the female characters are more prominent. But I think that's one of the things that I do think is like subtly attractive about the studio for people, is that it is such a different method of telling stories than possibly what were mainstream Westerners are possibly more used to. So yeah, go on, Hattie.
I think the main director, whose name begins with an H, and
Hayao Miyazaki.
I think he said at one point that his films are supposed to reflect like smart and resilient like nature of Japanese girls, which I really support. But then the co-founder, I don't know if you know about this, in 2016, whose name completely escapes me, made some slightly controversial comments because Studio Ghibli don't have any female directors, which I find quite interesting, or they don't that I know of. And he said that they don't hire female directors because women are realistic and men are idealistic, and to create the fantasy world they needed idealism, so they wouldn't have female directors.
That's really interesting. I never knew that.
Which I don't quite like, but then
no,
I watch all the films and I can complain about the comments because I don't agree with how like one of the least realistic people I know.
And you are a woman.
But represent. I find it really interesting that the co-founder of the whole studio would come out and say that, and yet the films have like such strong and diverse women.
Yeah.
Makes me sort of wonder about European and American cinema, where they struggle to hire female directors, and if they do, they're sometimes controlled by the studio, and if they don't, women are just presented in a really bad light, and it's a massive problem everywhere, I think, but Japan has somehow got it right, but not off screen. It's very
yes. That's a particularly interesting like observation. Yeah, that they would say that. I never knew that. That's really interesting. But yeah. Sorry. Did someone say something? Sorry, I didn't. No. Okay. I think you're right as well with the diverse aspect. Some of them are similar, but they are all different, and they are all in very different stories and things like that. And the male characters as well. Like, I mean, like considering, I think like the two main like male character movies, as in Porco Rosso and Princess Mononoke, which is kind of weird, but like even then, them two are so vastly different as people that and a likability and what they represent and who they are. It's just they're so fantastic at writing protagonists, and I think personally, the best villain is Muska from Laputa, because I think he's just so scary and he's like so. But they are also really good at villains. But there are lots of films where there is no villain as well, isn't there? In Ghibli movies, like I don't think there's a villain in Kiki's Delivery Service. Is there really? Like there's just things that go wrong.
The wind,
the bird,
yeah. And even in films where the kind of bad character or the villain is sort of a bigger power, like maybe something like in The Wind Rises or in Grave of Fireflies, they are never so clear cut that they're like, you are a villain or you are a good guy.
I quite like I don't remember his name, but like the person in my background, when he was the villain, he was quite creepy.
Yes,
I thought they did him quite well.
He's brilliant, isn't he? Yeah, he's very like scary and like I don't know. It's just he's very very.
And he's quite sympathetic at the end.
He is, yeah.
Give him that redemption arc, and I was like, that's quite good.
That's good. When you describe that, I always forget that like Spirited Away is their like most famous, like because it won an Oscar, didn't it? Like it was the most.
I think so.
Yeah, I believe it's actually the only one of them to win an Oscar, because Howl's Moving Castle came close, but it lost against Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
Oh my!
Which is,
I mean, it is Wallace and Gromit. I have to.
It's my two fandoms colliding, and I don't.
I know. I've spoken to Nathan about this, and Nathan's like steadfast thinks that like Curse of the Were-Rabbit is a better film, and I'm like, how? Everybody's fine. You're allowed to think that, but I just think Howl's Moving Castle. No way did it deserve to lose. I'm just gonna really quickly look up what the other film it was against was.
It's just the collaboration and the crossover that we need to see happen. It's
Howl's Moving Castle.
I want
claymation.
Wallace and Gromit in a Ghibli animated style.
Oh my god,
It'd be amazing.
that would be nuts. I want the two studios to do a collaboration together, just on our film.
I think that would be. It could be really interesting to see a claymation film, but in like an anime style.
I wonder how Ghibli would do with stop motion.
That's something I've never even like.
A few more years to make a film, I think.
Sorry, I'm just looking it up. It's like it's really. I'm trying to look on the Wikipedia, but I know it was definitely against that. But I can't remember what the other one was. I'm pretty sure it was like. Oh wait, here it was.
I mean, in a really bad way, it wouldn't surprise me because the Oscars just has a bad track with foreign language films.
They're not very good, are they? And animation, they always tend to go with
a lot of things.
I'm always thinking that with the success of Parasite, maybe things are going to get better with the Oscars.
Yes.
But then again, it might just go right back to saying, we've given you a year foreign films, let's give it back to Green Book 2.
Green Book 2?
No.
The other film it was up against was The Corpse Bride by Tim Burton. So what a strong year, by the way, for like animated features, like those being the top 3. Jesus. And they're also different as well, like very different styles and like themes and everything. Very nice. I would have been happier with either of those 2 winning against Wallace and Gromit, though. For me personally.
I do quite like Wallace and Gromit. So.
To be fair, there's another collaboration there.
I think that is your Britishness, yeah, maybe. But no, they are fantastic.
That emotional scene where you all think Wallace is dead, that hits me in the heart. It's like,
that hits different.
That's the real stuff.
That's something that House of Newcastle could never do. The other thing that they've got coming out is Miyazaki has come out of retirement to direct How Do You Live, which was originally slated for a 2020/21 release. At around the time of the 2020 Summer Olympics was the ideal time, which were going to be set in Japan, so it was going to be like a mega release. But it got moved to 2023 because they said as of October 2019, the film was only 15% complete. And Hayao Miyazaki said that it takes around a month to produce 1 minute of animated film now, whereas in the past it used to take a month to make 10 minutes of footage, which I'm intrigued that it has happened that way, because you would think the more time has passed, the quicker the technology would get to animate. But I suppose it's because it's always line drawn, so it has to, and possibly they're just adding more frames in it to make it smoother or something.
Perhaps it's because maybe it's less of a detailed drawing and it's more like before they weren't as big when they were making all these films like back to back. Now it's like, we've got to make a film which lives up to all our previous films, and they're like sort of stood there stressing out.
Yeah, they're like, this is got to be amazing, dude. Yeah, I think you're right though. It's the pressure of it. It's based on a book of the same name, as in How Do You Live, by Genzaburo Yoshino. I really hope I'm pronouncing it right. And it's about a 15-year-old boy so I guess male protagonist, who
finally male representation in cinema.
Finally, it's happened for you. Who, upon moving to a new neighborhood, and this is the only thing it describes, has to deal with spiritual growth, bullying, poverty, education, work, courage, and how to live as a human being, which is quite a lot of things to cover in it.
That's exciting.
That does sound exciting.
Just has life thrown at him, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gives me like Wind Rises kind of vibes. I think it sounds like it's going to be like lots of things, but it's going to be a bit not like slice of lifey, but it's going to be like less fantastical and more like lifey. Yeah, hopefully not too sad.
Somewhere.
What was that? Sorry.
There'll be a flying cat there somewhere.
I hope so. If there isn't a cat,
that's who the boy is, because he's trying to be human. It's a cat.
It's a cat trying to be human. Oh my god.
It's just Ponyo syndrome, except she doesn't go from fish to girl, it goes from cat to man.
Oh my god.
We've broken it.
If that is actually what happens, I'm going to be cross that you've figured that out and that's what it is. Do you think they're going to like try and add loads of like nods to previous films or not? Because like, it's like how in one of the films you guys spotted it said a certain, didn't it say Porco Rosso on something? What was it?
Yeah, Hattie spotted it. It was in a... Yeah.
It was in what, sorry?
It said Porco Rosso, which I found.
In what film?
Whisper of the Heart.
Yeah.
And what was the other one I was watching? And there was this small girl that came out of a door, and she looked exactly like
Laputa.
Yeah, it was that, and it was. My brain was like, what?
She does look
weird Pixar thing. It was. I don't think it's canon, but I want it to be. So I'm just like.
I think that's a whole other radio show. Like, is the Pixar theory canon? Like, what is going on with that? It's for another time. It's another time. But yeah, I guess like the character design thing is an interesting thing though, because like obviously it's similar, but there was one that you thought was like an older version of a character as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I can't quite remember
like
what it was.
It was some character that looked like Lushita, wasn't it, from Laputa, but in another film or something like that. I just think it's quite nice to think, like, I think it's harmless to think that they might be connected in some way, because some of them do act as though they live in the same universe because like some of them are more realistic and the others,
Yeah, they could very easily all live like together because like they're all self-contained little stories, and they could all just happen just outside of each other's area.
Yeah, or time realm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, you just reminded me. The other like epic film they tried to do was Tales of Earthsea, but that's kind of not as effective as Princess Mononoke. But it's still good. Still watch it, but not put it higher up on those lists. But the quote that I found about this film, this How Do You Live, that like when I read it, I was like, ow. Was it said that Toshio Suzuki, which is the producer for pretty much all of the Ghibli movies, and he's like part of the setting up, said that apparently Miyazaki is working on the film as a way of saying to his grandson, quote, "Grandpa is moving on to the next world soon, but he is leaving this film behind because he loves you." Which, like, oh.
I feel like, because you know how Japan definitely like respects its culture and like people who are really important. Like, there's the Nintendo guy. Like, apparently the Nintendo guy isn't allowed to ride a bike because he's so important. He has to drive a car. I feel like something really similar is going to happen when Hayazo dies, because like there's going to be like mourning in Japan, and us free.
Imagine your dad having such a legacy, like granddad and dad having such a, because I think, I don't know if it's Goro Miyazaki's son, because Goro is the guy who's directing the Earwig, like you said, Hattie. I don't know if it's his son or whether it's like possibly another one, but imagine your dad being a director of this studio, but your granddad like made this thing and it's like a cultural phenomenon, like, and it's such a, I don't know.
I find it bonkers. I just find it, part of me is like, oh, these people actually exist. Like when you meet celebrities and like all famous people in real life, and you're like, sorry, what? You're real? Like,
what?
Like part of me always knew, but part of me was like there was one time, like I'm just gonna name drop, but we were in a pub and we sat on this table with my grandparents. And I look across at the other table and I'm like, that man looks a little bit like Mark Gatiss. I'm like, but I'm not 100%. So I get him up on Google and I show it to my mum. Mum's like, yeah, no, it is. And,
oh my gosh.
And he was with his whole family. So I was like, I'm not going to do anything. This is just very awkward. And I'm trying not to look over all the time. Then, like, I go, the toilet's like in the same place, and I go in the toilet and I come out and Mark Gatiss is just standing there, and I'm like a foot away from Mark Gatiss.
I thought
that
was.
I just smiled and walked away. But in my head, I was like, "You don't exist. You're just there," and I can't quite fathom. It's all very. Like,
I thought that was Benedict Cumberbatch. Are you telling me you've seen both of the Sherlock brothers?
Yeah, I've met Mark
God.
and Benedict.
Is this in the Isle of Wight, as in the place that doesn't exist, or is this in England?
No, this is the Isle of Wight, the place that doesn't exist.
What? Why? I guess, at least though, if you like go to the Isle of Wight and like you as a famous person, people, it's like you're more likely to get recognised because it's a smaller place and everything. So I suppose I'm slightly more inclined to believe you because of the fact that it happened. And I don't disbelieve you. I think that this happened.
Studio Ghibli film about the Isle of Wight because we don't exist.
I think they would actually jump on that. It's Ponyo though, they've made it, yeah. Like George says.
But no, it would be one of those things. He is like, I am aware of him and I'm aware of his presence, but it just seems like, oh, he's got a family. Of course he does, because he's human. But like,
but something,
it's just sort of disbelief. Like, you've done all these amazing things, and you've also done what every other human has done, which is equally as amazing, but also like, what?
Yeah, no, you're right, though. It is really, really interesting. Do you guys ever go to, well, I actually know that you have, Hattie, but do you guys, George, really, do you go to conventions ever, or have you ever met a famous person?
I've been to one Comic-Con, I think, in Newcastle. And that was like before I even came to the uni here. And that's about it. I'm a bit of a shut-in. I don't really speak to people. This is the only communication I've had all month, really.
I'm sorry, oh, that's good. That's
no, I really want to like meet more people, do stuff like that. Hattie's just like seen everybody, so it's kind of.
I haven't seen everybody.
You've literally seen everybody.
Give me some list, Hattie. Give me some more that you've seen.
I've bumped into Mark Gatiss, Benedict Cumberbatch, which was like the best one, I think. I went to see Tom Hiddleston in a play. I didn't meet him. I did meet Zor Ashton, who's in Skins, I think it's called.
What do you? I was thinking, I don't know who that is, but I think I might if you described who he was, because I've seen Skins, but I'm not sure who it is.
There's a Netflix film called Velvet Buzzsaw that she's in as well with Jake Gyllenhaal. That's quite a good film as well.
Was it the one, the girl from the Maze Runner films, or not?
Oh, Kaya something.
She might be.
She's got dark hair, brown hair, and she's quite slim and small face.
I'll Google. I think you might be right. But,
Kaya Scolendo or Scolendo. I don't know how you say it. There's a guy, I've been watching Poldark with my mum, and there's the guy from Skins who plays like the emo boy in season 3 who's in Poldark as well. It's funny how
she was in Fresh Meat, which was the Jack Whitehall one.
Have I seen it? I can't remember.
It doesn't say the Maze Runner, but she might have been in there and it's just not come up.
I've not seen Skins, so.
I don't think I've met, my mum's met Francis Ford Coppola. That's a name drop.
Oh my goodness.
I wasn't there, which is really annoying. But no,
that's a bummer.
If you want to run into famous people, apparently the Isle of Wight is quite helpful.
Why do you think I latched onto Hattie? Like, that's my greatest chance of finding somebody.
That's the only reason we're together is because I
exactly.
I told him that story.
I want to see him.
That was the only thing. If he'd have seen Martin Scorsese, I think that would have just been the next level. Like,
do you know what was really bad? Is I went to Tyneside Cinema when the Ken Loach like Q&A was on for his new film, and we walked in, and Ken Loach was just in the foyer, just like chatting to people. And part of me was going to go over and be like, "What do you think about Marvel films?" Because it was literally the day after he'd released a statement and he'd agreed with Martin Scorsese about Marvel.
Okay.
I almost wore my Captain Marvel pin badge that night, and I was like, no, I can't, because we're sat in the front row. We're like this far away from Ken Loach and all these actors. I was like, I can't do it. But that was a weird night after everything that happened.
I think that's quite considerate of you, really, not to want to start an argument with Ken Loach. You know,
I don't know. I do like his films. I thought I better appreciate you slightly more, but.
That's sweet. The last kind of section of this, I've got a mini game. It's more like
can I
a
tell
quiz.
like a little fact first?
Oh my god, yes, go for it.
So, it's a story about our favourite, not problematic at all producer, Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, fun! Yes.
But basically, when he was in charge of the American release for Princess Mononoke, and like with obviously Studio Ghibli in Japan, but like he wanted to Americanize it, like cut bits out of the movie which didn't need to be in it, he thought. And the rumors are that Hayao, the director guy, he sent over a katana to his office with the words engraved, "No cuts," and it's just like the both badass.
Oh my god, that's badass! Oh my god. I really hope that's true. That's cool.
I really hope it's true as well.
Why didn't Bong Joon-ho do something like that for Snowpiercer? You should have just.
Oh my god. These Asian dudes are badass. Like, these Asian directors, man, they know what they're doing. That's cool. I wish we had backbone like that to just be like, no, we're not changing. I mean, this is not the time to talk about this, but have you seen that whole like Star Wars saying like, oh, we stand against racism and everything like that, yet they're perfectly happy to cut out black people from the posters that they use in some countries and stuff. And you're like, that's great. But yeah. Miyazaki just being like, no. Yeah. Game time. I've got 4 questions. I hope they're not too, I don't think they're too difficult, because I purposely, I was like, these, you both said we're not going to be very good at it. So I've made them fairly easy, I think. You guys do you want to work together or do you want to work separately? It's totally up to you.
I think together we have the joint brain power of a single brain cell. So.
Yeah. I honestly was going to say separately, but I'm glad you said together.
Okay, no, let's do it separately then. Let's do it separately.
No backtracking.
It's too late. It's too late.
That was doing it together. Shut up, George.
I want to compare my Ghibli knowledge with yours. Let's do it each to their own. Okay, we're doing it together.
Are you doing it together?
I have no idea what I'll be doing.
Finally, listen to me. We're doing it together.
Yes, okay. We're doing it together. Yes.
So I have 4 questions. First question, I think it's one. I think it's. I'll just say it and see if it's easy or not. What is the name of the cat in Kiki's delivery service?
Oh, it begins with a J. I think. This is really bad because I wanted a toy of it, so I was Googling it.
Oh, I would love that too. But yeah, no, I don't think it's really bad to not know it.
Is it like a Japanese name or is it like a Englishy word?
I think it's
I don't know.
I want to say like Jizu or something.
You're very close.
Jasper?
You're very close. Jasper,
I'm
no.
going further away.
Yeah, you're going. You're right. It does start with a J. It's shorter than Jasper.
Jitu.
Very close. I don't know if I should keep saying very. I'm like helping. It's fine. I'll think of the film, and then think of the name. I don't know if that helps or not.
Jiki.
Very close. You're painfully close.
Gigi.
Yes.
Oh, I got it.
Well done.
I kind of feel you kind of spoon-fed that to us, but we'll take it.
I was like, you're close.
Not Jasper.
It's not
the other name.
But I think that's still good. When I was younger, my dad and I have this really distinct memory of when we were on the plane one time somewhere, and when we were bored, we would like ask each other like trivia questions, like not like this, but this might be one of them, and I would never be able to guess the name of the cat. And so it's just ingrained in my brain now that it's Gigi. But like most people, I don't know. It's just,
that's really cute. Kiki and Gigi.
Right?
You probably did that purposefully. Now that I think about it, yeah.
Now that you think
I
about
haven't noticed that, to be honest.
No, I hadn't noticed it until recently either. But it's good. It's good naming on Ghibli's behalf. This is I'm just going to say them. I'm going to stop introducing them with like, this is a weird thing. True or false? Laputa in Laputa Castle in the Sky originally appears in the book Gulliver's Travels from 1926. True or false? You're immediately saying true. What are you saying, George?
Can I confer with my partner? Hattie, have you read Gulliver's Travels?
No, but I saw the film like 2 days ago, and I remember.
I've seen the one with Jack Black in it.
Jack Black. Is that the one you mean? The film?
I've got like a really weird memory of that film, and the only thing I remember is Jack Black on a beach, and that was just like.
I would remember he crushes the person who plays Boyle in Brooklyn Nine-Nine with his butt.
Isn't it? Oh.
At the start of the Jack Black one, Jack Black's character gets pulled down, and he lands on Boyle, and Boyle's that unlucky, and he just gets crushed.
Oh my god!
In hindsight, it's really violent.
Oh. Like casting, if I ever heard of it, but.
Oh, bless.
I think it's true, but I will blame you if I'm wrong.
Okay. So either way, I lose.
That's true. It's true. You're right, Hattie. That's a really bizarre fact that I didn't know at all. I thought that was very weird, but each to their own. Number 3, true or false? Another true or false. This is the last true or false one. Ponyo from 2008 is the film's real name is Ponyo Little Fishy by the Sea. True or false?
False.
Yeah, false.
It's false. The actual name is Ponyo on the Cliff by the Sea. That's
much better.
It's a very cute name, isn't it? The reason I said that as my description is I was like, I'm sure they're going to get this right. But the reason I described it as that way is because isn't the final song at the end like Ponyo, Ponyo, little fishy?
I love that. That's one of the best ones.
Such a bop. It's so good.
On like weird Ghibli films. We haven't mentioned the cover of Country Roads in Whisper of the Heart.
What? That's such a curveball the first time you listen to it. You're like, whoa, what? And the fact that it's like the first few minutes is kind of centered around it, isn't it? Because they're like writing a song, aren't they? And then they end up writing Country Roads. They're
like, don't call it Concrete Roads. And I'm
Concrete Roads, that's it, yeah. That's such a good
that was the weirdest thing.
I really want someone to have edited, you know, there's that really emotional scene in what's it called? Kingsman 2, The Golden Circle.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay. Well, like one of the characters, like he stands on a land. This is a big spoiler, but like it's not a very good film. Don't watch it. But like he stands on a landmine. His name's like Merlin, and like he was in the previous movie, and like he's one of like a fan favorite. He stands on it, and then he tries to lure over a bunch of enemies. So like when he stands off it, he like kabloodles a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Caboodle. That's a new
Caboodle.
word. But basically, he starts singing "Country Road" to lure them all over. I just want to double that, but it's just a Japanese version now.
That's such a niche market of like people who've seen.
I bet you there's a movie for it. There's a YouTube video.
Another crossover. We could have an anime version of Kingsman. I don't know if that's something I want.
That would actually be really funny though. It would just be like very weird but very good. So one time my film teacher said that Wes Anderson could never make, this isn't my uni film teacher, this is A-level. They said that Wes Anderson could never make a Bond film because they're too specific in their own genres. But I would love to see Wes Anderson make a James Bond movie like that.
I mean, it is already quite kind of Bond because like when he does the turn and shoots the gun, that's quite parallel Wes Anderson-y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible, and I hope it happens one day.
He should do an Austin Powers film. Wes Anderson.
That would be such
Boom.
That would be trip. That would just be. I love the Austin Powers movies, but like, man, can you imagine how like weirdly symmetric? They'd just be really infinitely creepier. I feel like because like everybody would stand really weird.
Wes Anderson's version of Shrek.
Oh wow.
This is getting worse.
He's just maybe invented something there. You just said something. I have one final question, which is the hardest one, I think. So, at the beginning of Princess Mononoke, Ashitaka saves a girl called Kaya and her two friends. And Kaya is the one who is later gives him a gem/dagger like necklace that he keeps for the rest of the movie until he gives it to Mononoke. Is Kaya A, his sister, B, his betrothed, or C, his cousin?
I think he's his cousin.
I'm gonna.
I don't know.
I'll be honest. I have already forgotten the first two options.
Sister, betrothed, or cousin?
Definitely not sister. I'm gonna go cousin as well. Yeah, but hey, if we lose, it's your fault.
Okay, I'll take that. I
love you both say that. Like, if we lose, it's your fault. But you both said it about each other.
I feel like 40% of our conversations, Kat.
Well, interestingly enough, you're both wrong. It's not a cousin.
Is the betrothed?
Yes.
I was about to say. I was going to say that, but then Hattie influenced my decision.
Hattie influenced my decision. Well, it's interesting because when I as a kid, I always ever thought she was his sister because at one point she says brother. Like at one point she refers to him as brother because I used to watch them as a kid in the English dub. I didn't used to watch the sub. So like she says brother, but when she says brother in the English version, she just means like older member of the tribe. She doesn't mean like sibling. And she is actually she's actually described as his bride-elect, which means like betrothed, which I think, so they're not related by blood, but she's actually supposed to be his betrothed, which I think makes the fact that he gives the necklace to Mononoke even more significant than it already was, because like that's like a betrothal thing almost, like she loves him that much and he loves Mononoke that much, you know what I mean? I don't know, I think there's some more to that than you realise when you don't realize. I'm curious what they say in the Japanese version when they say brother. I wonder if they say brother or whether they just say like sir. I don't know.
We did a whole English module on like translations and things like that, and my mind was like, no, I can't. This is
English language sucks.
Huh?
Yeah.
Like sheep, plural. Sheeps, no sheep. Stuff like that.
Point. Yeah, it's really
Pigs,
weird.
pig, cow, cows, sheep, sheep.
Sheeps. Yeah, it sounds wrong. Sorry.
Spanish A level. Nah. It was like I used to translate everything directly into English, and my Spanish teacher was like, you can't do it like that. You have to do this word, and then you have to jump around the sentence. And my brain was like, there's no order to this. I can't do it.
No, I think languages are so difficult. I have such respect for translators and stuff like that. 'Cause I'm like, how? Anyone that can learn a different language, man.
I started trying to learn, I think it was Mandarin or some Chinese dialect, but like, it was quite interesting because I was listening to this podcast version of it, which is really good. It's quite a logical language in like how they lay it out. Like English is not a logical language at all, but it's really interesting like how they lay out their language. So.
It is.
I mean, because we've been watching more Ghibli, I'm trying to learn a little bit of Japanese, like once a week on Duolingo when I remember that it's like something I'm trying to do. And all the symbols, there's some now that I like definitely know, but there's others, it will do like a whole other lesson and I'll be like, where the hell have these come from? Do we need these? Really? But it's just like, blows my mind a little bit. But
That's so lovely that you're trying to learn it though. Like after having watched some of these, that's really cool.
And there's some words now that I like recognize, and I'm
wow,
I know that word. But then there's the 99% of the rest of the film, but I'm like, what?
That's still more than some people, so I think you can be impressed. Do you know what word specifically it is, or is it more like you hear the sound and you know what it is, but you don't know the word itself?
It's more like when they say oh hi, which is like hello or like good morning or things like that. It has like a greeting attached to it. Yeah. Which someone's gonna tell me I'm horribly wrong, and I probably am. But there's like certain things like that I'm like, oh okay, I know that one.
Yeah.
This is Hattie's downfall into becoming a weeb.
Ghibli
was the gateway.
Ghibli is a gateway.
I am already there. I'm at the bottom of the pit.
Oh my god.
I found this really funny story. This isn't really. It is kind of to do with Ghibli, but like there was this. I think it was in an American school. There's a person who did a Japanese studies as a course.
Yeah.
And they got this really good Japanese linguist who spent multiple years in Japan, but she only stayed for 1 year because of how annoying all the weebs were. And I'm like, how can that happen? What were they saying?
Who? Yeah, like, do you think they were asking bizarre? Oh, I don't know. That's weebs are the worst, man. Like, I love them. I'm really tempted to join the anime society just because, like,
there's an anime society.
Yes.
Shout out to the anime society.
Shout out anime society. Thank you, just for being there and having the option.
I feel like we kind of just roasted them a little bit, but
no.
Good.
We roasted weebs slightly different, I think. Because no, sorry, Hattie, go on.
I did summer program with Reading University a few years ago, and the leader of my group was part of Anime Society, but it was like all she used to tell us about was Anime Society at Reading University. So now I know loads about it there, and I'm like, I know how to join and everything like that. I'm still friends with her somewhere, but it's just brought me major flashbacks.
Have you retained the information still now? Like, you could tell us now how to get into Reading Anime.
I mean, I probably have somehow. You could probably just
give us the inside scoop so these Newcastle Uni students know how to join it.
Yeah, they can join
Don't get me wrong, but I was like, I know more about anime society now than I ever thought I would.
That's mega interesting. I think that's a funny thing when you think back to the open days and like things that you did before choosing your uni that you pick now. I think it's like funny thinking back onto those. I don't know why, you just think like all those people might have gone to that uni. I don't know, it's just so funny, I don't know. But yeah. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of the show, really. Do you have any... I was curious to know what you guys would recommend to somebody who wants to get into Ghibli movies, has maybe seen one, or is maybe a fan of anime but never tried Ghibli, or just not really a fan particularly but wants to try it. Are there any movies that you would particularly recommend outside of your favourite ones that you think would be good? And are there any hidden gems as well that you would recommend? I'll start with mine just so that you guys can like think about which ones that you would pick. But the ones I would say is like ones to watch first are definitely like Spirited Away, and the sort of well-known ones, but I think that one and Princess Mononoke maybe, because I think they cover the similar kinds of things. I think if I was going to pick one that I think you should watch is Spirited Away, and if you have seen that, I think you should then watch it's a bit of a tough one, but I think then you should watch Princess Mononoke, but then again, you know, I've heard that it's a bit underwhelming. But I'm kidding. It's like the one that I would consider to be like a hidden gem that I think people who have seen Ghibli movies, but like the famous ones and are maybe looking for what should I watch that aren't the famous ones. For me personally, I would recommend Only Yesterday, which is from 1991, and it's actually, interestingly enough, one of the few films, along with such classics as Frankenstein, Seven Samurai, 12 Angry Men, and Toy Story, that actually have a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's very briefly, it's like this woman who is who's middle-aged, and she moves house, like she moves away, and during her move, she ends up seeing and remembering things from her past, so like you kind of watch her past happen alongside her journey, and it's really quite like emotional. And I think particularly when you're like our age, where like you have moved away from home and you're like possibly like remembering what your home life is like and things like that, I think it's particularly poignant, not only for like middle-aged people possibly who are like recollecting on their old life, but also for young people who are sort of remembering kind of like their high school experience and how different possibly they are now that they've gone to uni and things like that, and what things are on their new priorities. It's a very sweet film. And the other one is, of course, The Tale of Princess Kaguya, just because it's just so stunning and very emotional and also very feminist in its way. So, George, would you like to go first with one that you would like to recommend?
Well, obviously Porco Rosso, but probably like My Neighbor Totoro, because like when people are trying to get into Studio Ghibli, that's the main symbol of Studio Ghibli, I'd say. So like you'd want to find out who is this adorable bean thing there. So like
get the shocked face up.
Yeah, and it's like, oh yeah. There you go. But like yeah, he's such a sweet little kind of mystical fantasy story, and it's like it sort of gears you up for what you've got coming, in a sense. And the obscure one, definitely like Tale of Princess Kaguya. I can't say it, but
I think it's Kaguya.
Like, Kaguya, but like yeah, that it's. I think most reason people avoid it is because of the different art style or something. But like it's a brilliant film and very pretty.
Very pretty. Hattie.
I mean, basically similar to what everyone else said, but Ponyo.
I think Ponyo's getting a bit less rep from us because we were just like, it's great, but I'm like,
she is though.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird that she's walking along fish, but it is the ocean. Yeah, I kind of wish I watched Ponyo as like one of the first ones, alongside Totoro, because the first one I watched was Spirited Away, but I would have rather seen that a few films in. And I think in terms of like the lesser known ones, The Tale of the Princess, insert name, And
This radio show should just be called The Tale of Hattie and George Try and Say Princess Kaguya.
I'm an English student and I can't even speak.
I mean, it isn't English. Well, it is English.
No, but it's language.
Yeah.
And Whisper of the Heart, I just loved it so much. It's so wholesome and pure. It's different to everything else, but it's so cute.
I think Whisper of the Heart is like, apart from Ocean Waves, is kind of the only one that's like that, really. Like, there are ones that are a bit more delicate and more sort of like down to earth stories, like not down to earth at all, actually, that's not the right word, more small stories, not like massive, you know, universe ending sorts of things like Mononoke and Nausicaa and Pocahontas. Yeah. It's like, the only one like it is Ocean Waves, and Ocean Waves is not as good by any stretch. It's an interesting one though, and I'll link a video that I mentioned, I think it's to George about this, where it's a film that like some people believe is accidentally a gay film. Like the
yeah, you were talking about that.
Yeah, I don't want to mention it too much because obviously you guys haven't seen it, but I would recommend watching it before watching this video. But it's an interesting film because it's canonically not gay, but there's so much of it that seems like it should have been, or like it possibly was, and then it was shut down. I don't know. Interesting film, but not as good by any stretch as A Whisper of the Heart. Wow, I love that film.
It's just it's so pure. I love it.
Very good. I guess it's time for me to plug events and stuff that we have going on. We've got on Monday the 8th, so I guess 2 days from now, we've got in honor of UK Best Friends Day, we're watching The Perks of Being a Wallflower as a Netflix party at 7 p.m. So check out the Facebook event for more details if you're interested in joining us for that. And Peter would tell us, if he was here, to keep reading The Courier. You guys are quite good to talk to about this as well, because you guys write career articles. Do you guys have any that you guys have been writing some, haven't you? Like, obviously, Hattie, you've written one that's about Studio Ghibli. Have you guys been writing pretty much like every week? Because I see you guys post about them quite a lot.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think I've actually missed a week yet.
Damn.
Just a casual flex. Just a casual.
No, I missed one, but I had mumps. So that's like
excuses, Hattie. Excuses.
I bed watching Downton Abbey, leave me be.
I never finished the last season of Downton Abbey. I don't know why. Is it any good the last season?
I can't remember. I went like straight from the beginning. I think I got through about 3 seasons, and then they said I was well enough to like actually go out. I was like, no, I kind of want to stay in bed.
Down Abbey, yeah.
I liked the film. That's a controversial.
I didn't watch the film. I really want to, but I didn't get a chance to.
Yeah, it was really sweet and just like.
Oh.
Anyway. Downton Abbey episode of the.
So yeah, keep reading those if you're interested in hearing more film related things from these guys and Peter and other people from FilmSoc. Actually, quite a lot of FilmSoc members write for it, which is really sweet. We'll be continuing our live streams until, fingers crossed, all this kind of ends and we get to go back to uni. So for the meantime, do you guys have anything to plug or say before I close out? No.
Go stream Sonic 2 or go stream Sonic.
No, Sonic 2. We're talking in the future. Go and stream Sonic 2. It's not happened yet, but just do it. I still haven't
when it comes out. What? That really hurts me. I don't think Hattie's seen it either. I tried to get her to come see it on Valentine's Day, but for some reason she said no.
Wagamama's might be a nice little trip.
George, what is it about Sonic that makes you think everyone should see it?
It's because I hate it.
I think it's because I got to go by myself for a Courier review, and that was just nice, not having to pay. And like just Jim Carrey being back as Jim Carrey, that was just everything for me.
Nice. Oh. I kind of miss him too. Ever since that documentary, like Jim and Andy, did you guys see that?
Blew my mind. That was insane.
Wasn't it very weird? It's
The
all,
bit-
it's all...
Oh, I don't want to spoil it, but like there's certain intimate bits with other members
I haven't seen it.
of production.
I'm going to add it to my list.
That made me really uncomfortable.
Very weird film.
Very
Very
good.
weird, but very interesting. Like very like well made and
Yeah, I think it's like definitely something to watch. I think the first half is quite like you're entertained for it and you're like, oh, this is just a big joke, and then the second half you see how personal and real it gets, and I was like, oh, I should not have been laughing.
oh my god, I know.
This is quite serious.
Mm-hmm. What a film. Well, anyway, I guess that finishes our Studio Complete stream. It was thank you so much both of you for being on as per. I was really all next week maybe. We'll let you guys know obviously in time what show we'll be doing. But yeah, thank you and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.